And that should be telling you that you're recording now. And now I'm going to turn it over to our presenters for tonight.
Hi, everyone. I'm Trink Praxel, and I've been a master gardener since 2012, done lots of different things in master gardening. Um, I've been a gardener for 25 years, but once I retired, I said, you know what? Now it's time for me to take a little deeper dive into some of the questions I have about gardening, and took a couple of classes, and then finally became a master gardener, and I love it. We learn from each other so much. It's great. I grow about 4 beds. I have vegetables growing in about 4 beds. I have a few fruit trees, and then I have a lot of perennials as well. And I just love to teach, which is one of the reasons I'm here. I don't know everything, but all we always say as master gardeners, we don't know all the answers, but we can find them. So, and Eric is teaching with me. Eric?
Yeah, thanks, Trink. Hi, yeah, I'm Eric Borowski. I've been a master gardener just for almost a year now. I graduated class of 2024. Been gardening for about 12 years. I'm primarily a vegetable gardener. I have some flowers too, and some fruit trees also. I have several beds. I don't even know. I do 4x4 beds, so there's probably like 15 or something of those. Um, and I love growing corn. I grew corn in my front yard um, last year, popcorn specifically last year, and it got to be about 12 feet tall, and you couldn't see the half front of my house. So, yeah, it was fun. I love strawberries and I love ice cream, which I wish I could grow that, but I can't.
That's great. Okay, next slide. Okay, we kind of asked this while some of you were coming in to put down into our chat some of the signs and symptoms of pests that you're seeing in your garden. And one of the first one that came up was holes in my eggplant, I think. And then other people actually knew that they had slugs and snails and earwigs and other things. I can't now remember all of them. So, I think we're all used to seeing a variety of things. So as we talk, we'll tell you about some of these signs, and we'll actually get you really good at finding out what the answers are to those. Okay, next slide. Um, okay, what we're going to do today is really dig in. Well, we're not going to dig. We're going to first review what integrated pest management is, because we as master gardeners are taught about integrated pest management, and I think anyway, that it's really important for any gardener to know about this approach to pests, because it's really a systemic approach to any kind of a pest. It could be those insects or vertebrates, including squirrels and gophers, etc., weeds, diseases. It really teaches you how to diagnose a problem and then how to find the appropriate and effective management strategy to deal with that. So we're going to look at some of the top summer insect pests as we go later after talking about IPM. We'll talk about some of the top summer insect pests in our area, some diseases and the disease process, and we'll show you how to get some help when you're stuck. Next slide. So integrated, they're about 27,000, I think, from what I've read, insect species in California, and only about 1 to 3% of them are considered pests, but that's still a lot. So we can't address every possible pest you may run into in this class, but we can give you the tools to properly identify them. So integrated pest management is an ecosystem-based strategy. It looks at the garden as a community of interest, of interacting organisms, and it focuses on natural control factors, which are using the nature itself, the natural enemies, the natural habitat changes, the natural life cycles, and it uses a combination of techniques, not just one technique or practice, but a whole bunch of things that can have an impact on the pest effect in your garden. And we try to use those that are minimally disruptive, because we don't necessarily try to seek to eradicate that pest completely, but to control it in a natural way that it doesn't impact our garden. We keep it in balance, the natural interactions with the environment. Um, and that way we're using chemicals then only as a last resort and keeping things in balance. Next slide. So, sorry, I just backed up for a minute. Yeah, okay. It's helpful to understand that IPM is really like everything on our garden. It's a recurring process. So that's why you see this cycle here. There's steps. You're all, multiple times a year, you're going to be going through this process as you find a new impact of something that's happening in your garden. And it involves, and we'll go into these a bit more, but it involves inspecting, as you see, step one, setting up preventative measures as much as possible, identifying and learning about the pest, analyzing its impact on you, finding a treatment selection that's appropriate, applying that treatment selection, monitoring, and then if you want, certainly the farmers are doing this, documenting, but it's also helpful in your own garden to do that. Okay, next slide. Let's look at a few of these steps. Before you start any of those steps first, though, we want you to make sure that you know what your host plant is and that you know what your soil is and you know what you need for that plant in order to make it healthy. It's not in the steps of integrated pest management, but those of you that have been with us, this is the third in our vegetable growing series. You know that we've talked about water, sun exposure, soil, nutrition, etc. And again, that's all things you need to know before pests come in. Next slide. So the first step in IPM is inspecting. So you got to get out there. I always find, even though I have a drip system in mind, I want to get out there at least once a week. I really try to set my system so it forces me to get out there once a week. When I'm watering, I'm looking underneath the leaves. I'm looking at the health of the leaves, the color, the stems. I'm looking for signs of pests. And this is going to be your first step. Next slide. Second slide is preventing problems. Second step in the IPM process is preventing problems. Because you're dealing with an environment out there, you want to build a very healthy and balanced ecosystem. You want that soil, as we've talked about in the past, to be nice and strong. That's going to help your plants be strong. You want to plant some insectary plants that are going to draw the beneficials, and we'll talk about those beneficials a bit more. You want to look for plant-resistant varieties. Disease-resistant is what I mean to say. Varieties of particular plants that you're choosing. And if necessary, as the years go on, depending on, again, we've talked about rotation, about what you're growing and when rotation is necessary, that's something that's going to add to that balance. Next slide. This is the most critical step, identifying the pests, as many of you know. So some of you know what the pests are in your garden. That's great. I can tell you there's times, and we also have a help desk for master gardeners, and people just can't really, often they don't know how to identify pests. So this is the most crucial. You're going to be looking for feeding damage, as you've said, holes in plants. You're going to be looking for trails or frass, or as we say, poop. Part of the plant, you want to know what part of the plant is affected, how it affects that plant, what the color is, what the shape is, what are the holes, where are the holes in the plant. You may find some pests on the plant. Some of those may be the pests themselves. Some of it may be pest beneficials that are feeding off or laying eggs in those pests. So all of those things are crucial. Okay, next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Back up. Yes, I forgot a crucial thing. Can you go back? Sorry, Denise.
Do you want do you want to just go to the other page?
To the diagnosis page. Yes, please.
Right. Okay.
Okay. There is sorry, that was my confusion. Whenever there's an underlined section in these slides, what that is a link to a page, a reference page that because you'll be getting these slides, it's really good for you to know that those links should all work in what we send you. And that link on the Know Your Pest slide will take you to this wonderful page in our University of California IPM website that actually is a problem diagnosis tool. So it's about pests of all kinds, diseases, everything. And this is something they started just a few years ago, and we're all finding it very helpful. So in this case, let's look at that leaf that we had in the first picture and all the holes
Mm.
on it. And so we're going to say, first of all, the plant type that we want to talk about is vegetables. The plant name that we want to uh, look at is a cabbage. The plant parts are the leaves. Remember all those holes in the leaves? Thank you. And then the damage in those leaves are holes. And you can see where she's going there, leaves, holes, etc. And then you say view the results. You can see there's 7 of them. We'll see if it tells us quickly enough. But I can tell you already that what you need to know here is there's 7 of them. So, it is something that it's not going to tell you the exact pest, but it will give you enough information of possibilities that you can then go and explore each of those pests. And notice here that each of those are underlined. So if you click on one of those, yeah, click on cabbage worm, it will take you to a pest information page that will tell you all about that pest. It's taking a while here, so let's not
Kind
go
of
through it.
slowly.
Yeah, yeah, we'll go back to our slide deck, but I'll show you. You can see more of those later. We have so much information that we want to keep going here, so let's go ahead and go back to our slide deck. So you'll see here on this next slide, and we don't have the slideshow screen yet, Denise.
Right.
Right. Uh, so this slide shows you 3 different cabbage-related family plants. And if what we did was looked at that, and all of these, by the way, in that search, this is 3 of the 7 that would come up. And there are more. But the reason it's good to identify the pest is because if you treated this plant for earwigs because you said, oh, it's earwigs, so I'll just do the earwig approach, then that might not work because it might not work for slugs. Or, if you did that, you're not affecting the cabbage butterfly. And excuse me, if you sprayed BT, which is a organic approach for worms and that you don't need to do that for earwigs and slugs. So this is why we always say that this first method of identifying it is one of the most crucial. So next slide then, please. Okay, our 4th step in our IPM process then is analyzing that pest in your environment. You want to first learn about that pest. How does it develop? At what stage in its development? Is it eating your plant? What environment does it like? What are there, things it will like where you can change your environment that it will control it more? And does it attract other pests? Remember, you got to know your enemy, first of all, before you start battle. So next slide. And the next question is it really a problem? Um, some pests really do some damage, but not enough to really be worth it. You're never going to have a perfect vegetable garden. It's just, I don't know anybody who has it. And if that's the case, you're probably spraying many chemicals, unfortunately. You can certainly reduce the number of pests by all the things we're talking about. It can make a big difference. But the question will become to you, is this a aesthetic problem? Is this pest killing my plant or just disfiguring it? Can I pick off the leaves that are infested? Is the plant really at the end of its life? Sometimes it's the end of the summer when pests come in more voraciously. And is it just not worth it to try to maintain it? Next slide. Okay, so once you know the pest and you understand kind of something about that pest, you're going to say, how can I approach this then? When you go to on that UCIPM website, it will give you lots of information about that pest. It'll tell you everything you need to know about their life cycle and at which stage are they at when they're eating your cabbage or anything else. And then it'll start giving you these words about cultural strategies or controls, physical, biological, chemical, because this is what IPM breaks approaches strategies into controlling into these different types of controls. So let's look at some of them. Next slide. Okay, so the first one is cultural controls, and these are things that you do in your own garden that can have an impact. How can you change that environment to make it unfavorable for pests or more favorable for the beneficials? Things like removing debris, controlling weeds. Those are things, places where the pests can hide, that provide pet food for pests. Um, and cleaning up infested areas can make a difference. There could be a pile of wood that's harboring earwigs. We'll talk a bit more about, so knowing where earwigs are hiding or where snails are hiding in the middle of the day is going to help you. Do you have healthy soil? Have you dealt with any water issues that may be adding to disease? Do you sterilize your tools? And again, have you chosen the right plant for the right time of year? So do you know the plant well enough that it should be growing well at this time? Next slide. Okay, and then there are physical controls. These are things that you do physically to either keep the pest out, as is talked about here, exclusion. So things like our very favorite thing we've talked about in other classes in this series are row covers. Very useful in keeping plants out at a particular stage. Plant collars, they are like little collars. You can even cut a piece of paper, I don't have a picture of it, around a plant to control cutworms. So only certain kinds of pests could be controlled by those. Sticky barriers over here. We've talked about these before. These could control ants that are being farmed by aphids. And then these last two are really more for vertebrate pests, fencing to keep deer out and bagging fruit, also to keep squirrels, birds, other things from eating fruit on your tree. Next slide. And then there are physical controls. So, excuse me, there are mechanical controls within the physical area. Excuse me a minute. And this is the simple process of hand picking, as you see there, or washing, things that you can do with the pest, interacting with the pest or the plant that will help control those pests. Next slide. And then the third control is biological. This is where our beneficials come in. There are predators, there are parasitoids, there are parasites, there are a bunch of wonderful pests out there in the environment for us. Parasitoids are insects whose immature stage develops either within or attached to another insect. So, for example, that's what you see here on this slide, a wasp, a parasitoid wasp that is laying eggs inside of a caterpillar that's on some kind of vegetable, and that's going to kill that caterpillar. You may never even see the wasp, but you'll begin to see those dead bodies if those beneficials are nearby. Um, and then, of course, parasites are ones that feed on them but don't necessarily kill them. And then they're beneficial bacteria that it can control pests. They can make a significant difference in your insect population in your garden. So get to know these beneficials, be able to identify them so that you know and protect them. So you know you can protect them and not try to kill them. And it's certainly one of the best ways we can make sure that they're healthy in our garden is by not using chemicals that will hurt them. So there are a couple of ways to get beneficials. One is to invite them, and the other way is to buy some. But the buying is can be iffy. They can fly away easily. But if you create this kind of insectary plants, if you grow some of these, and this is a link, it'll give you a list of insectary plants, then that will help. This is a chart that shows you the beneficials, and then there's a whole gallery of natural enemies. There's lots of information out there about these guys. Next slide. And then the fourth control is chemical. And as we've said, we don't say never use them. We're actually UC does find times when they think they're effective, especially from the farmers, and they work with farmers to also use the lowest toxicity of chemicals if you have to use them. And what you see here is a list of some of them that are the lowest toxicity. Insecticidal soaps, I'm sure you've heard of them. They actually smother soft-bodied insects, so they're only going to be useful for the soft-bodied ones. And you need to know what kind of chemicals will control the particular pest you're looking for. And again, that information you'll find on the website is going to tell you some of that. Um, they Some of the oils, like spray oils, are also best on soft bodies. They can also, though, control dormant insects during the winter. So some of these can be effective with our fruit trees. Neem oil, it seems to be the most popular approach nowadays. I go to websites where people are talking about, or social media where people are talking about pests, and inevitably somebody answers, if I find an insect, I spray neem oil. I always go, no, because again, they're not learning about what that pest is, and the neem oil is not going to be useful for all pests. Neem oil is from a seed. It's a naturally occurring toxic chemical, and it blocks the insect endocrine system. And then there's Bacillus thuringiensis, which is we call BT for short. It's a bacterium that can kill larvae, those moth larvae. And really important, if you do decide to go with a chemical, use it as the last resort, but also make sure it's the right chemical for the pest you have, and that you read the label on it to make sure that it is not going to have a secondary impact on other insects in your garden. So, for example, spraying insecticidal soap, spraying neem oil, any of these you want to do early in the morning, later in the day, when there are not any bees in your garden or other beneficials, because it's going to affect them. It's universal. It's not going to choose the insect. And some of them can actually be detrimental to fish if your garden is flowing, water from your garden is flowing out to other areas where fish could be found. Next slide. Okay, here we are again, the focus on prevention. So if we're encouraging you not to use pesticides, these are the two basic things you just need to remember. Create that balanced ecosystem, bring in those beneficials, use remay, floating row cover when you need to, hand pick or spray water remove certain insects, and use the spray as a last resort, and a low toxicity spray. Next slide. Okay, I'm turning you over to you, Eric. There you go.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, good. Somebody said it was quiet earlier, so just let me know if you can't hear. So, all right, let's go ahead and do a case study where we step through the IPM process together. Next slide, please. All right, so here you can see what we have. This is an apple tree. You can see the leaves. They look curled, deformed, and that's on new growth specifically on the branch tips of the apple tree. What's the next thing we'll do? Can somebody put in the chat what you think the next thing we do is? Any ideas?
If you don't know what's causing this, what might you do? Well, I guess we better tell them.
All right. right. Well, it's listed. First, you inspect. Okay. So next slide, please. Okay. So these are pictures from the same thing. So we can see here, um, first observation, right? We have some ants crawling around. Um, there, there's yellow, white, and black tiny crawling insects. Um, there's black schmutz on some leaves. That is the exudant. I forgot the term. The exude, I think is
Uh-huh.
from some kind of insect. Uh, you can see ladybird beetles, which are also known as ladybugs. And you can see some unknown black and red crawling insects to the left there of the ladybug. And then to the right of the ladybug, you see here there's insect shells and there's holes in those insect shells. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we're in a second we're going to go over to the website. Um, but you should really try to come up with 1 to 3 potential causes, uh, sources of the problem. Um, now, do you have any guesses? Just looking for at the previous slide, what this might be before we go look into it. No guesses? Okay. Well, let's go to the website, Denise. Okay. So once Denise brings this up, I'm going to show you the other way to go look up insects. So what Denise did the first time is she went, oops, lost my page. Hold on. Oh, great. Hold on here a second.
Do you want me to just, Denise, you kind of know what we're looking for? So instead of the that search engine that we looked at before, this you can also use UCIPM to go into the search terms up here and enter why don't you enter, yeah, curly leaves on apple trees.
Thank you.
There you go. You can see that now, Eric. Want to go ahead?
Yeah, okay. I'm just gonna walk through it blindly because I can't see the screen.
Oh,
Anyways,
yeah.
yeah, and it's my fault. It's my problem. But so did you already did the search, right?
Yes, we got the search.
Yeah, so you can see the first link there. It's talking about you can see it's talking about a specific type of aphid. So um, and that's if you click into it, it seems like it really matches the criteria of what we see for our symptoms, right?
Right,
Um,
so scroll down a bit. So you can see here, damage management, keep going. So, and then they talk about biological controls, monitoring, treatment, etc. Okay. So that's just another way to use our UC IPM website. So
right.
you
So
certainly get aphids if you did it the other way as well.
right, you can go the first way or this way, and you find the similar results both ways. So you're not always going to find exactly what you're looking for. So it'll take you a little bit of digging and inspecting. Um, but that's part of the fun is kind of doing the investigative work too. We can go back to the slideshow, please.
She's almost there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Next
So
slide.
if we had read through all the documents on the website, we would have learned a few things, right?
Yep.
We would have learned that the ants were farming aphids. And
Next slide there, Denise.
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
What we learned. Yep. I guess we're there.
Yeah, there should be another, go one more advanced, Denise. There we go. This is individual. So yeah, ants farming the aphids.
Yep. Right. So ants are farming the aphids, and the aphids are sucking the plant juices, and then the ants are then eating the honeydew, which is what the honeydew is what the aphids exude from their bodies and leave on the plants. It's a sticky kind of a substance. So those ants love that sticky honeydew. Um, right. Then we see we have a secondary infection of it's a type of mold growing on the honeydew, and that's what's causing that black color schmutz. Then we have um, ladybug larvae. So those are actually baby baby ladybugs eating the eating aphids. So they love aphids. And then we also have the adults eating the aphids too. And that's why, a lot of times you'll hear people, hey, let's just put aphids in, or sorry, ladybugs in our garden. It'll take care of all our pests. Well, it sounds good in theory, but like Trink said, I mean, oftentimes they'll just fly away, go to another yard, right? It's hard to just have them stay where you want them to. So, and then the aphids also are parasitized by a type of wasp called a parasitoid wasp, right? So they land on the um, on the aphids, and I believe, and then uh, put a parasite or it's actually what is it? It's what is it? Trink. It's like a
They lay their eggs in the
eggs.
yeah,
Yep.
that
Yep.
dance, and then you'll see little holes in those. That's where the eggs are, the larvae are coming out. Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah,
And you can buy these wasps on Amazon. I don't know if it makes sense or not to do that either, just because they could fly away too, right?
right. But worth a try if
Yeah.
you're, yep. But in this, let's go next slide then.
Yeah.
So is it
Um,
really a problem?
right. Is it really a problem? What do you think in the chat? Any opinions? Do you think that what we saw in that leaf was a problem? Will it kill the tree? Do you think it will reduce the fruit yield or introduce disease, um, stunt the growth or weaken it, or is it just cosmetic and will it just take care of itself? Um, and typically, sometimes depending on what you're talking about, well, the aphids on a kale plant are kind of destroy the kale plant pretty significantly, but on the apple they're not as significant, right? So you might just be able to live with it or just do some basic kind of treatment there.
Great.
Yeah. Next slide. And here we got some strategies, right? Uh, you could do a strong spray of water, spray off the aphids. Um, Cultural practices, you could prune off the affected areas, the affected leaves. Um, Physical, you could see in the picture there a tanglefoot around the tree trunk to control the ants. Um, Biological treatment, the predators that are already present, or you could buy them if you want to try that. Uh, you could try, going down to like less, uh, to more of the last resort, like low toxic chemical soap spray, right? Versus one of the neem oil, um, the more harsh organic for pesticides. Then finally go to some chemical. Well, in this case, it's not required. You're not going to need to do that for the apple. So um, the bottom line here, uh, aphids reproduce fast but are easy to control, especially if they're caught early. And that's why Chink was saying you wanted to go out there ideally every day, but I mean she's going every week. Just go at a good frequency and just keep checking up on how things are looking. Um, so yeah, next slide. I think that may be back to you, Trink.
Right.
I'm
Yeah, I'll
gonna
just follow.
I'm gonna exit and come back in so I can fix my window, but please
Okay.
go ahead.
Great, Eric. Understand. I want to add on to something Eric said that yeah, once a week in the summer is really probably not frequent enough to catch your problems because if you do see aphids on a particular plant, but a week later they could be at a population level that is going to destroy that plant. Whereas if you do something about it within the next couple of days, you might be able to control it. So keep those in mind. We'll talk about that more. So we're just going to look now at some of the most common insects in our summer vegetable gardens. Certainly not all of them, but they kind of follow a certain pattern that I think will help you address other types that you may find as well. Next slide. Okay, let's talk about those aphids again. And the way we're structuring this particular review for each of them is again in a way that you would see it in your um, IPM when you looked at some of those websites. So it's also helpful to know that certain plants serve as hosts. Well, let me put that differently. Reverse that. Insects like certain kinds of plants. So some are very specific about what they like, and others will eat anything. I'm afraid aphids are in the will eat anything category, but they can be worse on some of our brassicas or cold plants. Things like um, cauliflower and broccoli and kale and those things. Um, which is the destructive life cycle? They're nymphs. As let me explain. Nymph is a young insect, not an adult. Nymphs and adults, and those aphids are so prolific that they do many generations per year out in the wild, and they'll have up to 80 offspring each week for each individual aphid. So that's what I mean when I say they can duplicate and their population can explode in just a very short period of time. So they are a sucking insect. It's also, if you learn about insects, it's good to know kind of how they feed. That will help you look at a plant and be able to identify a little bit more. Is it smooth on the edges? Then that's probably sucking. If it looks like it's chewed, that's a chewing insect. Again, just a way to identify. So they've got these long, slender mouth parts that they pierce into the plant and then they suck out that fluid. And they also, in that process, like mosquitoes and other insects, so eject something at the same time. So that's what's going to cause those leaves to curl. And as Eric said, they're exuding that sticky honeydew that can cause a secondary infection. Uh, Prevention is early detection, really. You can't prevent it as much as you can catch them early on. And at that point, the first thing you want to do is try to dislodge them. Aphids, for some reason, once you dislodge them, they really don't come back onto the plant. Others may be there. You may not have gotten them all. Eggs may have hatched. So you need to keep at it. If you kind of do a spray 2 or 3 days in a row, you're going to see a reduction in that population, and you may be able to prevent a major not infection. What am I thinking of? Anyway, a bunch of population coming in. There's also reflective mulches that you can use. I've never tried this, but they do exist out there, and it might be worth a try if you're having ongoing problems with aphids. But the most important thing in my mind with aphids is that the beneficials. I really have worked over the years to really create a more balanced environment within my garden, and I see the difference that it makes. So, okay, next slide. Um, okay. Leaf hoppers. You can see one there that's really tiny. They're much, much tinier than that. Thank heavens. But what you notice about leaf hoppers is when you rub against the plant, you see these little things jumping all over the leaf hoppers. So and then you'll see this kind of stippling effect on the leaves, this little kind of bleached white sections or spots. Again, it's the adult and the nymph. There are all kinds of different kinds of leaf hoppers. I see them more, to tell you the truth, in ornamentals than I do in vegetables, but you can see them in both. They are, again, a summer insect. The eggs during the winter, their feeding damage again is sucking, and they can again have this sooty mold grow on the honeydew that they put out. Prevention is just, eliminating. It's that balance again, I'm afraid, but it's also eliminating sticks and twigs where they may be overwintering, particularly if you had a problem one year within an area of a plant, and then I would try to remove any debris around that may encourage or provide them habitat for the winter. Again, a spray of water could be very helpful. And this is one where a soap spray actually can be helpful. And with any kind of a spray like that, you have to make sure you get the undersides of the leaves because that's where the nymphs are. So give it a go. Next slide. Okay, white flies. These are all kind of they're all related to aphids. So that's why I put these three together because whiteflies and leafhoppers are all related to aphids. They're all kind of sucking insects, and they're all pretty much generalists. They like a wide variety of things, or there's different genuses of them that like different ones. Whiteflies are again a thing that you can see fly up, not as much as the leafhoppers, but they're pretty obvious when you see whiteflies. Um, but the leaves, not so much. You won't see that stippling that you see with the leafhoppers, but you'll see some leaves turning yellow. And again, we've got the mold that can come out afterwards after they leave the honeydew. Um, Again, beneficials are the best answer, and controlling population is the best prevent management. Removing affected plants. There's yellow sticky tape that you can put near them that will catch some. If you've got a bad infestation, it's not going to help a lot, but it will at least show you what your numbers are like. And unfortunately, with these guys, the sprays can be ineffective because they're just so mobile. So the whiteflies are tough ones, and thank heavens they're not so serious in vegetable gardens as they are with other plants. Next slide. This is a great one. I actually had no idea what leaf miner was until I became a master gardener, and I said, "Oh, that's what that is." So this is a fun one to learn about. These are actually an insect that the larvae, the adult is this fly that you see here, a black and yellow fly, this yellow triangle on its back. It's quite small, and it flies around and lays an egg in, say, your spinach. Um, and and then pretty soon you'll begin to see these little trails in your spinach. And if you actually pull the two sides of the leaf apart, you will find that that's a little tunnel in there, a miner. And the larva is a miner in that leaf eating the inside of the leaf. I think it's a very clever adaptation. Um, and because of that, they're really hard. You can't spray for them because they're just protected by the leaf. So it's not, this is really kind of um, it's not so much a problem in spring and fall. They're much more active in summer. So what I tend to do, like with spinach, and this is the best time of year to grow spinach anyway, is spring and fall. In the summer, it gets too hot, and the leaf miners come out heavily. Um, Let's see what else here. It doesn't, again, these mines don't really kill the plant, but it makes some of those leafy greens pretty inedible. So if you catch it early, you can pull off the affected ones and hope that you get most of it. And this is again where a floating row cover is very useful, because if you can keep those flies off your spinach later, then you won't get as many of them of the miners coming out. Okay. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to a different, both the last one and this one, we're going to kind of not so much sucking aphid-like creatures, but more larvae that are causing the damage. So here, imported cabbage worms are particularly love brassicas, the cabbages, the broccoli, the cauliflower, the kale, the chard, other things. These are fun little creatures to find. They are about an inch long. They're hairy, and they've got this great green color. They've got, if you look really closely at that photo, you'll see that there's some yellow lines on the sides and on the top. They chew, so these are chewers, not suckers. Um, and they'll create irregular holes in the leaves. So if you remember back to that slide, there was a cabbage worm. Cabbage that looked cabbage family plant that looked similar to the cabbage family plant that was eaten by the snails. So similar kind of damage. But here you'll also find some of the brown fecal pellets inside the leaves. That's telling. Um, Prevention is cover, again, a floating row cover. When once you see that white butterfly, which is the mature adult phase, with that little, very distinctive white butterfly with a black spot, you know it's time to cover up any of the brassicas that you have, so that you can prevent these cabbages. And again, they're mostly cool weather. Uh, you can hand pick off these guys. A taconid fly is beneficial. You might find some of them. Remember that photo of well, that was a wasp, but there are flies too that will lay eggs in them. This is with the worms is when BT spray can be effective. Again, I wouldn't use it unless it's really a last resort for a crop that's important to you, because if you try to pick them off, do whatever you can to control them, and then you won't need that. And there's a link here to the UCIPM pest note. Next slide. Loopers are again a larvae stage creature that loves the brassicas. And you can see that again, it's a green caterpillar looking. They look similar to the one we looked at before. And but they have this interesting looping movement that you see there when they move, and that cabbage worm does not. So that's a difference. Again, irregular holes, most often on older leaves, but these can go right into the lettuce or the cabbage head, right into the heart of the plant as well, of the vegetable. And floating row covers again are best. I don't have a picture of their adult stage. I'll have to look that up. But these come again a little later in the summer, so watch for them. Hand picking, some beneficials, and then the BT spray is, if you really need it, is effective. I always, for cabbages and things like that, I always try to plant a little more than I need. So it's that idea of I may lose one to a couple of these guys before I catch them, but hopefully I won't. I'll be able to catch it early enough that it won't affect the other plants as well. Okay, and next slide now. Okay, I'm going to turn over Eric to talk to you about snails and slugs.
Hey, yep, we're talking about mollusks, which are snails and slugs are two types of mollusks, and earwigs. Next slide, please. Okay, so what you're going to do to look for these first, you're going to inspect in the daytime, look at all the plant parts. What kind of feeding damage are you seeing? Is it chewed or is it sucked on? Can you see any frass, which is that snail poop or slug poop? Slime trails, which is the mollusks leave a slime trail with their foot that they move around on. And then you go out at night with a flashlight, and that's when you'll see the snails, slugs, and earwigs. So you won't see them necessarily during the day. And I think, yeah, next slide. Okay, so management, right? Hand picking them, mostly at night, because that's where we're gonna be able to find them. If it grosses you out, wear some gloves. And then you have a few options. You can drop them in soapy or salty water, and then add to compost when dead. Bag them and put them in the garbage. Feed to chickens or ducks if you have them. And then it's one thing you could do is right. For a week you hand pick them every night, and then after after about a week, you should be good for about a season. So some you maybe do every season. Um, or last option, if you like escargot, you can eat them. Let's do next slide. Okay, so cultural practices you can do here. Um, so a lot of this has to do with getting rid of those hiding places, right? So under board. I'm sure if you've lifted a rock or a board, you'll find some snails and or slugs, right? Other possibilities are ivy, weedy areas, debris. Um, Make sure to place your garden in the sunniest spot possible because these guys definitely don't like sun, right? They like cloudy days and they like cooler weather, right? So they're not going to go straight out in the sun. Um, so if you think about it, if you don't have debris right next to your vegetable garden, they're going to have to travel a long way to get over to your vegetable garden, right? So but if you have a board right next to your kale or something, right, then you might be in trouble. So yeah, just clean up a little bit around the yard. Um, and then another thing is if you're the way you water can matter, right? So drip irrigation leaves much less of a surface moisture, right? Which they love that wet. As you can see after a rainstorm, they're all out on the sidewalk. Next slide. And then trapping, that's the next step you can take. You can take a board raised about an inch off the ground and you put it down. Um, with runners or stones or something to keep it up. And then you can lift that sucker up and you'll just scrape them off daily using the method we talked about before. And that can be a great way to reduce the numbers in your garden. Or come up with some other way you can think about trapping them. It's whatever. Let your creativity guide you. No, next slide, please. Here's another one. It's called beer traps. So I personally wouldn't want to waste beer in this. So the good thing is you can take sugar, water, and yeast. So you could do that and put that in a little cup or a tin of some sort, and then you want to bury this tin so that I think it's so the top is at ground level. So then you put that mixture of the water and the yeast or beer if you want, and then they're going to go and they're attracted to it, so they go and then fall in, and then because it's a vertical going, it's going to be hard for them to climb back out, and then you just dispose of them. And then if it's rainy, which right now we're probably not going to have that problem, but you can cover them to keep the rain out of that thing. Um, let's see. I think the next slide now. Now we got some other options, barriers. So this can get a little expensive with copper, but you could go 4 to 6 inch wide band of copper, buried an inch below the soil and bent over at the top. Because when they touch this copper, it's for them they sense it as an electric shock, so they definitely don't like that. You can do a 2 to 3 inch wide strip attached around the edge of a raised bed. But don't leave any section uncovered or they'll find that way through up to your bed, the top of your bed. Um, Now the problem is it doesn't stay effective, especially if you don't clean it. So you got to once it gets tarnished, you have to clean it with some vinegar. And another important point is it doesn't kill them; it just excludes them. So it's not going to reduce your population, just reduce it in that bed. So. Okay, and we'll go next. Right, here's some examples of that barrier, um, of that copper there. See, so that's an option for you, right? Like,
Looks like a good use for pennies, Eric.
oh yeah, that's right. If you can find real copper pennies, yeah, yeah. Let's see, next slide. Okay, then going towards your kind of last option, which is try to save that for the end if you need it. Iron phosphate baits. Um, the good thing about those is they're safe around your pets and your kids. There's also uh, a type of that is called spinosad. I don't know how to pronounce that to be honest.
Good
Um,
enough.
yeah, the good thing is that will control earwigs and cutworms in addition to those snails and slugs. Um, you wanna avoid metaldehyde baits. They're poisonous to dogs and birds, and you probably don't want your kids around them either. So The way to apply this stuff, if you need to, is you irrigate first, then apply in the evening. You want to scatter it. You don't want big piles of this stuff, right? And do not water it afterwards. It won't be as effective. You just, pouring your money down the dirt. Um, and yeah, I think that's it on the chemical side. Let's go to the next slide. Um, okay, so earwigs is another problem we have. I can tell you my experience with earwigs is a lot of the times I'll look inside my artichoke plants and they looks fine when I look at it, but then I turn it upside down and kind of bang it on the ground and like this like tons and tons of earwigs come out. They love that hiding spot, I think. So yeah, I've definitely had some challenges with them. Um, but yeah, so don't blame snails and slugs and everything. Earwigs are causing us problems too. Um, let's go to the next slide. So here's some management strategies, right? First, let's always look around, see what we can clean up. That habitat is really important. Um, they love old wood. Sometimes living in the borders of your raised beds, so it can be challenging. Um, However, they are fairly easy to trap. Um, and just like snails, you can set those traps at night for a week, and you see a significant drop in the population. Um, so traps should just be, tightly rolled newspaper or corrugated cardboard or short lengths of bamboo, right? You set them at the foot of the plant at night, and then in the morning go grab them before it gets too hot, and then you shake them on a hard surface, and then do whatever you want to do to get rid of them, stomp them or whatever. Um, or you can drop them in the soapy water, just like with the snails. Yeah, I think they just like those hiding places, so they'll just go in there. Next slide. Um, yeah, so here's just those, the visible diagram on those, like the rolled newspaper that you can see the bamboo in the middle there, and the cardboard up on that tree post. So, yeah, those are just a few ideas. Now, birds are also a good way to control slugs, snails, and earwigs, but they may, if you've probably seen before, eat your seeds or your seedlings. So be careful with that. And next slide.
Okay. This is our last section, and it'll be a quick one, and then we'll answer questions. But we just wanted to touch on disease a little bit, and the different microorganisms that cause disease. So notice, next slide, please. Notice here that this, what we call a disease triangle, that there has to be all three elements here for a disease to develop. And so what you want to do is to try to prevent one or two of those three parts of the disease triangle. Next slide. Okay, there's obviously bacterial, viral, and fungal are different pathogens. Bacterial and viral diseases are not so common for our vegetables. I mean, they do exist, a handful of them, but mostly with our vegetables, we're getting funguses. So back early when we were talking about starting seeds and growing starts, we talked about the damping off fungus, which happens with new little young vegetable starts where this fungus attacks their stem, and you can see them falling over. And then there's Fusarium and Verticillium wilt, which are both soil-based, and powdery mildew, which is common on leaves. And we're going to look at a couple of these. But notice this link here again. It's a pathogen to host chart, which could be helpful to you. So it's which host plants are more susceptible to certain pathogens. You can look at that later. Next slide. So generally, disease is one of those things that's really hard to cure. Once you actually see the disease, it's usually too late. There are a couple of things you could possibly do, but mostly once a disease takes root, so to speak, in the plant, you're really looking at trying to remove it. There are some resistant varieties of various kinds of plants that will address these diseases, which our wonderful scientists have been helping us with for years. And you also want to make sure that you disinfect your tools so you're not spreading any disease once you see it. And notice that part that says remove the diseased plants, do not compost. So you don't want to put any diseased plants in your compost. It'll just spread it even further. Next slide. Okay, let's look at powdery mildew. This is one I deal with, I know, every year, especially at the end of the season in my squash plants. It's just inevitable, and so I hope to get what I need off of that plant before it gets powdery mildew. In squash plants, it's generally white, as you can see on this picture. In tomatoes, and it also does affect tomatoes. It's more of a yellow, and it's you know, it's sorry, let me think here for a minute. It really doesn't kill the plant, but it more just weakens it to the point that it can't produce. So thank heavens for me, my experience is that it happens more at the end of the season. So by time that really takes effect, I'm looking at pulling out those plants fairly soon. Um, so fungus requires water to reproduce and grow. Mostly not, I actually was reading something recently from UCIPM that said that there's certain uh, funguses that actually don't need that water. But still, you want to try to reduce the possibility by watering at the base of the plant and not getting those leaves wet. I think for me, I live in a foggy area, so that's one of the reasons I get it. But once you see the spores developing, there's probably not much you can do. Um, Again, disinfecting. Give your plants lots of sun. Make sure they have airflow, so you might want to thin them a bit if you can, so they're not all bunched together and tight. Um, and if you really need to, a horticultural oil is really the best approach on this one. Next slide. And then the other worst disease in our local gardens is verticillium wilt in tomatoes. Again, a fungus that is a soil-based fungus. So it's affecting the plant's vascular system. You can see here how the picture on the top right, a healthy one on the right and with the fungus on the left. So you can actually see that turns the leaves brown. It'll eventually affect the whole plant. Once you see it like that, you might try cutting some of it off if you can catch it early enough. But if it's in with other tomatoes, you probably want to pull those tomatoes out, and you're probably going to need to solarize the soil in the next year or change if it's in a pot using a completely different soil base. And rotating the crops uh, certainly helps prevent this. I read something just recently that brassicas may inoculate the soil against this kind of soil-based funguses, particularly verticillium wilt. So I haven't heard of particular gardeners who've tried that, but it's worth a try if you get it a lot. So next slide. So these next two slides are really just different kinds of chemicals and notes about them and how they work. What are they targeting? So this is just, I'm not going to go through these. They're just this one and the next. Go ahead and see the next slide. It continues on. So you can, this more detailed information about those chemicals that we mentioned. Okay, next slide. They're okay now. What we always like to say at the end of our classes is if you get stumped and have trying to use some of this in the garden and are having difficulty, something that we haven't addressed, just go to our website and enter this little, click on this section about the Master Gardener Hotline, and you'll get a form that you can fill out and even attach a photograph, and somebody will get back to you within 3 to 5 days, we say. So good luck. And then the next slide after that is kind of our closing slide before our questions. There is an evaluation link Oh, sorry, I ignore that HTTPS, ignore that. Um, Tiffany, I think, is going to put an evaluation link into the slide deck there in the chat, and it'll also be with the material that we send you with this slide deck. So please give us feedback. Tell us what else, how you like the class, but also what else would you like to hear about? What else would you love to have a class from us on? And you'll also then get a follow-up email within a couple of months that comes from our system-wide office, and they're really trying to see how effective. It'll be asking you, have you used any of the techniques you learned in the class? Have they been useful to you? And here are a couple of classes that are coming up in this next month of May, a composting class and a native plant gardening class to take a look at on our website. Okay, I think we're ready for questions. Tiffany, you want to tell
And
us, are there any?
Trink, I was going to say one thing. Just, I mean,
Please.
it's in the chat also, but that link up at the top is the correct link,
Oh,
so
is
you
it?
don't have to
Okay.
ignore it. Yeah,
Okay, great.
off we go.
Great. I thought it was left over.
Nope.
Okay. Now it's time for you guys. Now, there's so few of us that we might want to try to have us all go live with our video and then we can go live with audio too, but raise your hand through the website if you have a question.
Yeah, so feel free to raise your hand or put your question in chat if you're not at a place where you can turn your video on right now. We have one that came in so far during the chat, so I'll go ahead and ask you all that while people think if they have other questions. And that is a great question that came in. Can companion gardening help with insect control?
I have read that it can. I have not read any scientific research on this. There are uh, some things on the internet, of course, that you can read. All of us master gardeners, because we provide science-based information, we really encourage everyone to, if you find something that sounds interesting, try to find a scientific-based or an educational-based website that discusses that. So you can do that by doing, .edu when you're doing a search, so it'll come up with educational answers to that particular question. I know that what I've read about companion is often how it helps each other through what they put in the soil, how they grow, the shade or the sun, um, and not so much insects, but I do think there's some of that as well. So, afraid I can't answer it completely.
You did say, Trink, though, that you by getting your ecosystem more balanced, it did bring the predatory insects in more, right?
Absolutely. So really growing some of those insectary plants really does help. I know I was suspicious of that when I was first gardening. It's like, really? But it does attract those beneficials, makes a big difference.
It also looks pretty.
Yeah.
If you have, I always put marigolds in my vegetable garden,
Yep.
whether they actually do anything other than look pretty, I don't care because they look pretty.
And I've forgotten to mention, I didn't put a slide in. The second part of this class is really a hands-on where we meet on Saturday from 10 to 12 out at our demo garden in Watsonville. And we really encourage you to come to that. It's been a fun time to meet face to face and to talk about some of what we talked about in the class. In this case, it can give you an opportunity. If you can't identify something, bring us a part of the plant that's being eaten and we'll help you try to identify it. One of the things we master gardeners are always taught is how to use a loop, which is a microscopic little, I don't know, how do you describe it, Eric? It's a little microscope. Yeah.
A lens?
A lens, yeah.
There you
So
go.
we'll bring our loops and we kind of can look at some insects, which is fun. And so hope you come. But I was thinking of the garden because borage is a plant that is grown in the garden that is very attractive and attractive. An attractant that is attractive.
We have a question that came in related to copper sulfate. The question is, no mention of copper sulfate mixes for some disease control, such as powdery mildew. Is that a fairly safe choice for the environment?
Oh, this is a tough one. I am afraid I don't know the answer to this, which is what we say when we don't know the answer. And I would say that, who is this, Nick? I will research this for you, the safety of it and its effectiveness, and get back to you. Eric, do you have any comment on this one?
So, the only thing it was recommended for in the class was for the peach leaf curl, and you can't once it's growing though in the season you can't it's not effective. You got to do it while after all the leaves have dropped before any buds have formed. So yeah, it's
That's
very
very true.
repetitive in nature. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's very true. Tiffany, Denise, either of you have a comment on this?
Um, I was gonna say mostly I've heard of it being used, like I said, for peach leaf curl,
Yeah.
in the dormant times. And I know we have a peach tree that my husband usually treats multiple times in the dormant period. So it's not a one and done kind of a thing. And this year I notice it's much better than it has been, but we still haven't gotten rid of it completely.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that, we'll make a note, Trinkle, do a little bit of research on this, and we'll make sure that that goes out when we send the email to you with
Everybody.
the presentation and all. So I'll make sure that gets put in there as well.
This discussion reminds me that it also says with peach leaf curl, to do it before the blossoms form. So obviously there's a need to keep it away from the formation of that fruit. So I think it's not something you're going to want to put on other vegetables that, where you're going to impact the actual fruit development, fruit or vegetable development. But we'll give her a specific. Boy, you don't have many questions, you guys. Surprised. Okay. Okay. Okay, well, I think that we may close it up then. I really do encourage you to come out. Oh, you do have to register for the class on Saturday simply because we want to know how many people are coming. So if you plan to come out, we can walk around the garden, we can look for pests. It can be a fun hands-on experience, and you can bring us samples. So.
The directions to the gardener also will get sent to you, and some people have had some confusion on actually getting to it. So we want to make sure you've got that information as well. So if you register, of course, you'll get the specific information on getting there.
Great. Okay, happy growing and happy pest control. Good luck. And the next session in this series is going to be, I think, in July. I don't remember the specific date, but that's really more just a time for people to ask questions. We don't have, at least yet, any kind of very specific presentation to make. But this is a time when things should be growing well, but it's a time where you might be seeing some problems that you're not sure about, and we'll try to answer them. Some Fahrenheit, you have an answer on companion. Marigolds, yep, different, yep. Nematodes on vegetables, there you go. Yeah, so it's again the marigold approach. So that's companion planting, as in planting insectary plants that attract the beneficials. And that's very good. Good. Okay, thank you all.
All right. Thank you all for coming. I hope you learned a little bit here, and we'll make sure you get the information soon so you can have all those links right at your fingertips. So, all right.
Thank you. It was very helpful.
Thank you.
Good. Good. Thank you. All right. See you soon.
See you soon.